you look at the most successful people in the world, I know very few of them that haven't had a major failure. You know, if you read through they're not the financially most successful people. If you read through the Forbes billionaire list and you read their stories, you know, they've had failed businesses and they've lost everything and they've hung on they've almost died holding on to the ledge. So there are lots of examples of people who had huge adversity. And I think it's how you deal with adversity that determines your ultimate success, as opposed to how you deal with success that determines your ultimate success. My approach in business, in my personal life, in a management role, is extreme candor. Just be direct. If you live that way, you'll run the risk of offending various people over time, but you'll have much better relationships because, if you tell people the truth, first of all, it's not typical. You know, a lot of people, in the interest of politeness or fear of confrontation, or it's just uncomfortable, don't speak the truth. And that goes for people on boards. Mm-hmm. You know, there are lots of examples of super talented people sitting around the room as an institution is failing. Think of all the banks during the crisis where people were not willing to confront the CEO. So I'm willing to confront the CEO, but I'm completely candid with him about his successes and his failures. But I give him, I don't run the company. I'm not involved day to day at all. I trust his judgment. It's a bit of a trust but verify type relationship, and it's worked very well. So that's my only public leadership role. I am CEO of Pershing Square. It's a much easier business to run than a normal company because we've got only 56 employees. And here the key to successful leadership is, one, hiring the right people. I have the benefit of not inheriting anyone because I hired everyone in the company. I interview every receptionist, I interview every secretary, I interview every investment person. And so I get to pick ultimately everyone that I work with. And that helps leadership a lot, because if you hire, the key behind leadership, if you hire super talented people, you don't need to do that much leadership because they're going to do the right thing. Second thing is setting up the incentives correctly. So in Pershing Square, everyone is incentivized by how the overall firm does, which I think is a good dynamic because it creates teamwork. I follow the same extreme candor approach in evaluating people. And I care about everyone I work with as I do of family members. And so we look out for each other, and if someone's going through a difficult health issue or personal issue, financial issue, or, I have the benefit of having a lot of relationships, and whether it's the medical community or in the business community or in the political community, and so we help our people. And we don't tolerate insincerity. People are encouraged to admit their mistakes immediately before they figure out a solution to the problem. So when I hired my CFO, in the first year of working with him, he would approach me with a mistake he had made after he had figured out how to solve the problem. And I would get angry with him every time. I said, no, I don't want to hear about the mistake after you figured out the solution. I want to hear the mistake now, and then we can work together on solving the problem. So I think if you have an organization where people very quickly admit mistakes, and where you're candid with them, and they're not punished for making a mistake, that is a very good dynamic. And it's worked very well. We have almost no turnover, even in the reception desk at Pershing Square, and that's worked. It's been a good model. Great. And so I don't do that much leadership, other than I guess on the leadership side, I think you have to. You have to set an example in terms of the way you live, in terms of the way you behave, because that affects how other people will watch you. So my other key success factor for being a leader in the 21st century, in the era of everyone having a video camera on their cell phone, is assume that everything you're doing is being videoed and recorded at all times, and that will, and consider that the video ends up as a top video on YouTube, and then adjust your behavior accordingly. So, fair. The way to really understand investing is to understand a business. And one of the most important skills you need as an investor is distinguishing between a great business, a good business, a fair business, and a bad business. And one way to get a sense of the quality of a business is go to work for one. This is the greatest time in history to work for a startup. There are lots of incredibly interesting businesses being formed. And if you can be one of the early employees, you're going to learn a lot about how a business works, how to make payroll, how to market your product, how to design something. And those skills, I think, are invaluable. First of all, you might even find it really interesting. You might have joined the next Facebook, so that's one thing. Even if the business fails, you'll learn a ton from that. I think that's the best experience you can get, ultimately, to be a good fundamental investor. Experience is making mistakes and learning from mistakes. And unfortunately, as students, you haven't made many mistakes yet. If you've gotten to Oxford at this point in your career, The biggest risk is you probably haven't screwed up a lot. And so, the risk of that is when data comes across your desk that's inconsistent with your being successful, you're less likely to pay attention to it than if you've made a few mistakes. So I encourage you to make some mistakes. Actually, I've made plenty over the course of my career, and I think I've been very successful over time, but it's not been a straight line up. In fact, if I were a stock, it would look something like this after business school, and then, so the concern is whether this is coming, But so far, the overall trend has generally been positive, but there are certainly bumps along the way.